Hey everyone. I have a summer semester going on, and um, we're bringing this new technology into our curriculum at Rankin. My name is Evan Gudmestead, and I'm an instructor of application and web development at Rankin Technical College. And this new technology is called .NET Maui, and I just thought it'd be fun to throw a little thumbnail of some AI knockoff Maui from the cartoon Moana, because every time I hear Maui, that's what I think of. I think of the main character that is played by The Rock in the movie Moana, or at least voice acted. Anyways, I made this silly AI image, threw myself on there. Okay, that's the thumbnail. That's kind of fun. But the activity that I'm going through is learning Maui for the first time, and then starting to bring it into the curriculum, which I'm doing this summer semester. And so I've been learning Maui for a couple of weeks now, doing some different tutorials, and so I'm definitely a beginner. And as I'm learning, it's like, well, I could just DIY learn it, but I figure maybe throw it out on the interwebs. Maybe some people stream, watch. Maybe they can learn with me as I go through these docs, and again, as a beginner. So if you just kind of go to the Microsoft docs, obviously Maui is part of the .NET platform, owned by Microsoft, created by Microsoft, used for building Windows apps, Mac OS, so it can run on both Windows and Mac, iPhone, and Android. So pretty cross-platform. And then I have seen where there's also, you build Maui apps kind of as the back end and Blazor on the front end. So web applications is too. They don't really talk about that here, but I've seen that in the templates, although I haven't coded anything with it. One code base, which seems really attractive for all these different platforms. And, got a couple different things that I hope to go through today. Again, it's summer, got a little time to learn. If you were to just click getting started here, these are the basic things, but I noticed here on this tab, run on your mobile device, as I've gone through this, I had to do some steps to get my Android emulator to work. But obviously, I got to get this to work for all my students and all my students' laptops or desktops or anything like that. And I didn't necessarily take these exact steps. So I'm thinking, oh boy. Even though I got it to work on my machine, I'm probably going to need to show this to my students. And in fact, I'm going to copy this URL and I'm going to post this in the Discord channel. So just a quick note to my students in the text channel for this summer semester. Next week, we will have the first tutorial on .NET Maui. These steps should be taken per Microsoft to run the Android emulator. I did not cover these exact steps in my first tutorial. However, please take them. Please take these steps to quote unquote check all the boxes and make sure your laptop or desktop is able to run mobile virtual machines, VMs, or emulators. So that's going to be kind of what I want to go through first, and just go through these steps. Now, maybe I'm lucky in that YouTube live control panel. Select a stream. I'm looking at this. Okay, whatever. Oh, I can actually see who's connected in. Okay, cool. Just looking at my OBS settings. So we'll go through these steps kind of first, and then once I take these steps, which is back here, then I'm going to do a second tutorial. Again, if I kind of go back to this learn.net Maui at this URL, this was the quick start. But then there's learning courses. And this is a 33, so I'm going to do this next. So about 9 modules, 7 hours worth, beginner level, all good stuff. So step 1 is kind of the quick start. We'll go through that quick start, at least the important stuff, because this is just templated code. We'll skip that. Once we get through the quick start, I'll at least get this 1000 experience. The .NET Maui workload installed, so I do have that already installed. Familiarity with C# and .NET, definitely got that. Play .NET 6, that seems already .NET 6. We're on .NET 9 or 10 now, so probably skip that video. All right, activate Hyper-V. Turn Windows feature on or off. Make sure Hyper-V is checked. Yeah, see, I already had that checked. That's why it worked for me. You'll need to reboot your machine. Okay, well, it's already checked. That's good. Don't have to do that. Just wanted to put that out there for my students because that's a step I did not take. Now, I did enable virtualization in the BIOS, which is an important step, but this would seem like an important step to not miss as well. Yeah, so this is a simple first step, but then this, the Android SDK install, here's my experience. I did this, and when you select Android emulators, it just downloads and install. You click accept. Like if you select that Android emulator, like it's going to just install what it needs. I guess I'll just double check all this so there's no mistakes. Okay, so if I go to either one, doesn't really matter. These are both things I did on Maui tutorials, Maui code that I've already written. From the debug, select .NET 8 Android under Framework. So boot this up. The line endings are not consistent. Sure, go ahead and normalize the line endings. And here's our debug. Framework. Select .NET 8 Android under Framework. We got .NET 9, so that just changes it to the Android emulator. It's another way of doing the same thing. You just go Windows machine, Android emulator. So if you select .NET Android, or you should just go here, same difference. If you haven't accepted the license yet, you'll see an error message. Double-click the start. Double-click the message to accept the license. I've already done this. Accepted the license agreement. We've already set up an Android emulator. We've already configured a new device. Once the emulator has been created, you'll see a button that says Start. Click it. So if I go to Tools, Android, Device Manager, there's my Pixel 7. You may receive a prompt to enable hypervisor platform. Follow the documentation to enable acceleration to improve performance required to get the emulator up and running. This is the part that I did not read, but I stumbled my way through. How to enable hardware acceleration. What's beeping at me? Oh. My phone booted up. So there's my little app. There's my emulator. Let's make sure I checked all these options. This seems like a good step. It's also like, why don't I just boot up a iPhone emulator? Right? Let me close that down. Pretty sure I know where this is going, but maybe not. Okay, so on Mac, here's a different documentation for the Mac. Accelerate Android emulators on Windows. The Windows Hypervisor Platform. The Android emulator hypervisor driver. That's what I selected. For best experience, it is recommended you use WHPX to accelerate the emulator. The AEHD. Oh my gosh, all these letters. So use WHPX. If you don't have WHPX, use AEHD. Oh my goodness. The Android emulator automatically uses hardware acceleration. Accelerate with Hyper-V, which is the preferred WHPX. We want to use WHPX. Before enabling Hyper-V, read the following section. It supports Hyper-V. Your computer must have Intel. We got that. Extended tables. Okay. I don't know if it has all this. I know we got that. I don't know. Extended pages tables. Extended unrestricted guest. Windows 10 or Windows 11. To verify your computer has the hardware and software installed compatible, open a command prompt. System info. If all listed requirements have the value of yes, then you can support Hyper-V. We'll see what mine says. So Hyper-V requirements. Hypervisor has been detected. Features for all Hyper-V will not be displayed. Why not? if Hyper-V results in currently running, Hyper-V is already enabled. Okay, good. That seems good. Enable Hyper-V acceleration. Okay. Wasn't this basically what I did already? Windows features. Now it's interesting because I've done, going back to these two options, so this is good to learn. It's basically two options, WHPX or AEHD. If that one's not available, you could use that one. I've essentially done both. And in my learning prior to this, I just enabled this AEHD. But Hyper-V might have already been. Now there's also a checkbox underneath here that looks Windows Hypervisor Platform. So let's just double check. Hyper-V Platform Services. Yeah, that's all checked, so that's good. Somewhere else lower, looks like Windows Hypervisor Platform under W. Now that's not checked. Ooh, good catch. Check that out. That's useful. I'm going to put this snippet in Discord. So there's that. The snippet was helpful. Where's my snippet? On my machine, I did not have the Windows Hypervisor Platform checkbox checked. That's cool. Okay, so back to this. Okay, Windows need to reboot. I'm not going to restart now because I'm streaming. And it was working beforehand, but this might make it perform better. That's the objective. Now this is actually what I did prior. Android emulator hypervisor driver. So I'm going to put in my message to my students. How do I spell Android? Android. I did not cover these exact steps in my first tutorial because I used AEHD acceleration. Instead of WHPX acceleration. In my tutorial, I used AEHD acceleration instead of WHPX acceleration. Period. Either will work, but if you can enable WHPX, it's actually better, considered more performant. Yeah. Next week we'll have the first tutorial on .NET Maui. My tutorial used AED instead of division. Either will work. Below I show the check boxes for WHPX. I show the process. Cool. Check, check, check. Already did that. Already had this one done. So this is just settings and that. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Good. Good. All right. So that's the quick start. Kind of finished up on that quick start, which doesn't really. It was useful. In getting that option selected. Now let's start. Okay, so now I'm gonna do this 33-minute tutorial. We'll see. Learn how to use Visual Studio to build your app. Again, where was this? If I kind of well, the URL is up top, but basically learn.NET Maui takes us to the Microsoft Docs. So .NET.Microsoft.com, learn Maui, learning courses. This is where we are. And then after this, I'm going to clone the Maui samples and kind of chug through this a little bit. So a couple more to-dos. Oh, I'm not so familiar with streaming, so hello, I've got 2 concurrent viewers and I didn't know anyone was watching. So cool. Welcome aboard. Say hello. Why not? It's summer. Good morning. So, as part of this, there's some reading. I'll skim it. Feel free to skim it with me. .NET Maui is a multi-platform framework for desktop. Right, we covered that as Windows and Mac desktop apps and mobile apps with C# and XAML. Extensible is the X application markup language. So XML kind of, I don't know if you consider XAML kind of like XML 2.0, because XML, let's Gemini that one. This is my LLM. Is XAML a updated XML? So XML fundamental similarities. It's more accurate to say XAML is a dialect Okay. So a dialect is like a one path, right? So you have like English, and we have American English, and we have uh, English spoken like in Europe, right? That's a little bit more formal. And so those are different dialects of the same language. And so they're based on the same language, but maybe one's more formal than the other or informal. I think Spanish has the same thing. Like, depending on where you speak Spanish, like, you just have different versions of the same language. XML is a general purpose markup language designed for transporting and storing data. For transporting and storing data, it's structure self-descriptive data formats. So I've definitely done a fair amount with XML. XAML is designed for defining user interfaces, which is how we're going to use it. Data bindings, resources, and other objects within .NET Framework. Now, it does talk about .NET Frameworks. I thought it was more broad than that. While XML, so XML's, pretty, it's semantic. Like, it'll say, hey, first name Evan, right? And this can, it's like descriptive, right? So it contains data. So transporting and storing data. So this tag stores the data, and it's a low-level format. So like, you put it in this .xml format, and like, you're sending it across a network. And so it's like low-level. It's not binary low-level, but it's low-level in the sense that it doesn't take a lot of processing power to convert into binary. So very familiar with XML, but a little less familiar with XAML. Semantic. While XML focus on data, XAML elements directly map to objects and properties. The XAML parser knows how to instantiate these objects and set their projects. Okay, for example, a button element in XAML corresponds with a button object. Okay. XAML utilizes namespaces in .NET. Think of it this way. Imagine XML as the building blocks like bricks, woods, and concrete. XAML are the architectural plans. Well, isn't that efficient? I love that. XAML leverages the syntax of XML, but adds semantic layer defining .NET application UIs. It's not just a newer version of XML, it's a language built upon XML foundation to address particular need in application development. Cool. These UI tools, or these AI tools, not UI, are incredible at explaining this stuff. I guess my next question is, it has seen some adoption. .NET Maui, Microsoft. .NET dominance. Okay. Yes. Sometimes. Okay. We have a third concurrent viewer. Hello, internet person. I'm just going through some learning of the Microsoft Docs to learn .NET Maui so I can bring it into my classroom. I've taught C#. I mean, I say for over a decade, but it's probably closer to 15 years. And as long as I've taught C#, I've always just taught the foundations class, the foundation C# class, using console apps and Windows Forms. But Windows Forms are obviously dated. You find them out there in, companies that have old software, and there's a lot of companies with old software, and there's a lot of companies that have Windows Forms. But man, let's update this curriculum and get it. Build some mobile apps. Who doesn't want to build mobile apps? So I'm kind of excited to bring this in and learn this, right? Got to keep learning. Okay, then they give a scenario. You want to build an app for a grocery store. One-touch dialing to the store. Push notifications. The app therefore needs to access some hardware features. You are tasked with identifying a technology of building a proof of concept, not bulletproof, just building a proof of concept. You identify .NET Maui as a likely technology choice. Creating a user interface, easily handling access to hardware. Okay. Additionally, with .NET Maui, you can make use of the C# skills. So I'm going to transition this Learn C# class into Learn C# through Maui. It's kind of the vision for the future. Okay, learn the architecture of .NET Maui, create a Maui app, create a UI for the different platforms, deploy it from Visual Studio. I don't think that actually means to the Android store, although that needs to be part of the curriculum. Access platform APIs. To create Maui apps, you will need .NET 9, Visual Studio. Click that box. If you're on a Mac, you're going to need VS Code with the .NET Maui extension, .NET SDK, and here's the documentation for Mac users. Okay, so this is the theory portion. No one loves the theory portion. My students love to write the code and actually build the software, but that's often short-sighted. When you have a firm understanding of things like architecture, you can build better software. And so, big picture, the theory helps us all. So, bear with me as we get through 5 minutes of theory. A common pattern used to form cross-platform app development is to factor the business logic from the user interface. So, separation of concerns. Business logic UI, and then develop separate UI for each platform. So, you got the business logic in a separate UI. While the business logic remains unchanged from each type of device, the code that drives the app and presents the data can vary. Separation of concerns. Business logic remains the same. UI is different across all the different platforms. This variance is because of the differing capabilities, API features that the devices provide. So that's what they talk about, like writing native code. And it's like, in the past, like if you write native code, like at one point, you couldn't do push notifications unless you wrote native code. Right, and I don't think that's the case anymore. Like all apps, of course, want your attention. They want to demand your attention all the time, and they do that with things like push notifications. And if you didn't write native code, you couldn't do push notifications, and so that was no good. But that's been solved by now. The purpose of .NET Maui Multi-platform is the A. Application user interface is to simplify multi-platform app development using .NET Maui. You create multi-platform apps using a single project, but you can add platform-specific source code and resources if necessary. The key aim is to enable you to implement much of your application logic and UI layout into a single code base. That's just a note worth keeping. I don't know where I want to keep that note. That's a note worth highlighting and keeping. What is the technology stack? .NET provides a series of platform-specific frameworks for creating .NET for Android, .NET for iOS, .NET for Mac, WinUI 3 for Windows apps. These frameworks all have access to the .NET base class library. Base class, of course, to use the base class. This library provides the functionality for creating and managing resources and generally abstracting the details of the underlying devices away from your code. The base class library depends on .NET Runtime to provide the execution environment to your code. Mono is an open source implementation of the .NET Runtime. Implements Android, iOS, Mac OS environments. On Windows, Win32 provides the same role. So Mono helps us with Android, iOS, and Mac. To run .NET apps on Android, iOS, and Mac. We have Mono. But in Windows, it's Win32. Helps us run our .NET apps. Mono. While the base class library enables applications running on different types of devices to share business logic, the various platforms have different ways of defining an application's user interface. Okay, and that's kind of that separation of concerns. The various platforms have different ways of defining the UI. The platform providing this platform, platforms provide varying models for specifying how the user interface elements communicate and interoperate. You can craft the UI for each platform separately by using the appropriate platform specific, but this approach requires you to maintain a code base for each individual family of devices. That's not what we want to do. .NET Maui provides a single framework for building UIs for mobile and desktop apps. You create the UI using this framework, indicated by arrow 1, and .NET Maui converts it to the appropriate platform. So you write your code. Arrow 1 takes me here to the abstraction layer. And then from that abstraction layer, it says, .NET Maui takes care of converting to the appropriate platform. I guess 2 goes to each one. It goes through the abstraction layer. Yeah, okay. And this is they got this kind of box around here because this is the mono that they're talking about, kind of thing. So it's really about that front end code being so different on all the devices. There might be times we need to implement platform-specific feature. In these situations, you can invoke methods in the platform-specific framework highlighted by arrow 3. And so you do still have, like, if there's a feature that's only available on Android, you might want to write that feature-specific code. So that'll be interesting to do if we get there. How does it work? This is our it says XML, but XAML. .NET Maui abstracts elements just looking at my stream here on OBS. Okay, we're going to start writing code here in a little bit. .NET extracts a UI element implementation from its logical description. You can describe the UI using XAML, extensible application markup language, a platform neutral language based on XML. For example, the following fragment shows a button, right? There we go. Semantic hint. This is your event handler. Display options. Example defines a button that says click me, that calls this method when it's clicked, should be run when the user selects the button. Other properties can modify the layout of the button. In this example, the text is centered on the button. The text is centered on the text is centered. I see. This horizontal text, okay. So for example, on an iOS, it'll be a UI button control. If you have an Android, it'll be an app compat button control. So these are different controls on the different platforms, but Maui handles that for you. Which seems fantastic. I mean, really glad to be learning this and bringing it into our curriculum. These handlers are accessed indirectly through a control interface. So iButton interface would implement the event handlers for a button. So you code this Maui button. The interface is iButton that'll wire up the handler. Those handlers will then map to their different controls on the different platforms. UI button, app compat button, and simply button in Windows. This is good stuff, good theory. If you prefer, you can also create a UI dynamically using C#. This approach enables you to modify the layout. For example, you might want, okay, so instead of using XAML as here, you could use C# to build your UI. And it reminds me of like building desktop apps with Java a long time ago, coding Java buttons and all that kind of stuff. .NET Maui makes it easy to access common controls such as button. Other common controls like text fields, labels, date pickers are easy. However, individual controls aren't enough to make a good platform for creating rich apps. Elaborate layouts. Got a lot to do, a lot to learn about layouts. It's always important. Laying out controls. Page types for navigation, like drawers. Could think of some apps that use drawers. Maybe not. Nothing's coming to mind. Support for data binding. Right, so we're going to be working with databases, of course, and binding controls to fields out of the database, the ability to create custom handlers. So that's always a good thing, right? So of course there's always button clicks, but what if you want to run an event when this certain event occurs in your app? Access to native APIs and abstraction of many common needs of mobile and desktop apps that are separate from the UI. The Essentials library enables an app to access things like GPS, accelerometer, the battery, and network states. These are dozens of sensors and services common to mobile apps, also available through this library. So this is the Essentials library to get you access to GPS. That's cool. Okay. Now, we saw that this is Win32. Mono's for everything else besides Windows. Which markup language? XAML. Yay. Next. Create a .NET Maui project. Alright, let's close this. File, close solution. Create a new project. .NET Maui app. If you just search for Maui. Now this is also exciting. .NET Maui Blazor Hybrid. Ooh. A project for creating Maui apps for iOS, Android, Mac, WinUI. I think this, right, so we got iOS, iPhones, Android, Mac Catalyst. So I think that's going to be your desktops and laptops for Macs. WinUI is for Windows-based machines. Tizen, I think, is a new addition, and I think Tizen is Samsung. What is Tizen? I think it's your Samsung OS. No, Linux-based OS. Oh, developed by Samsung. I was on track. I was tracking. Tizen's for smart TVs, wearables, home appliances. Okay. Smartphones. While Samsungs typically use Android, some. See, man. Okay. Yeah, right and wrong. I needed a better understanding of Tizen. This looks like a good template, but that's not the template we're going with. I'm looking forward to building this as well, because this is the supreme. This is you're not just getting, one app type or the other. These are all the apps, right? And using Blazor, which is web applications, right? Done some Blazor tutorials. Put this in my Maui tutorials. I'm just going to put this under, call this Microsoft. Getting started. We got to create the folder. And what do we call this? Call it My Maui app. Okay, and I select this checkbox inside that folder, let that spin. Right, .NET 9, all good, create. Okay. Platforms: Android, iOS, Mac, Tizen, Linux, Samsung, Windows. Platforms: Android, iOS, Mac, Tizen, Windows. Project structure and application startup. The project includes the following: app, and this is a lot of files. App, XAML, app shell, XAML, main page, XAML, Maui program, CS. And so just to kind of like hit these quickly, app.xaml, application resources. These are application resources. App.xaml, application resources. Things like maybe images, colors, styles. Actually, I said images, but it was more about app colors and app styles. Okay. And then there's all these app XAML is resources, colors, and styles. Then there's a code behind. So all of these app XAML resources also have resources. I'm going to say that 100 times for my comprehension. And then there's a code behind. That's a C# code behind the .xaml. It defines the app class. So here is the class definition for app. This class represents your application at runtime. This class creates a window and assigns it to the main page property. So here's our window. And somewhere in here, I think it's in this new app shell, says, hey, our window is main page. Kind of, there's app shell. I'm not sure how it assigns it to the main page. But nonetheless, some in here is a window, and the window is, this essentially loads main page. When you call create window, somehow we're in there. If I dig, this property determines which page is displayed when the application starts running. Additionally, this class enables you to override. Okay, so app.xaml is resources, and then this code behind is going to tell you what window loads when the thing loads, when you run the page. So obviously you might want to change that at some point. You can override lifecycle events. This is described later. These are your lifecycle events. Okay. App shell. So that's app.xaml. Resources and loading the main page. Got it. Next one. I mean, there's 4 files, so it's not a ton, but a little bit to get familiar with. Okay, the shell. Okay, the app has a shell, something on top of the app. I don't know. Turtle has a shell, something on top of the app, something on top of the turtle. Okay, this file is the main structure. Okay, HTML is the structure of the web page. So this is the structure of our app. The shell provides features that are beneficial for multi-platform apps, including app styling. Again, app styling was up here. Resources, including styles for every control. Styling was kind of up here in the app XAML, but we're also saying styling down here in the shell. URI-based navigation and options for layout, including flyout navigation and tabs. Okay, So I'm going to think of the application structure. Kind of just seeing, you could see some things it's talking about here. Fly out behavior, your app title. Everyone wants to know where the title is. Like on an and again, hey, the structure, the HTML title, the structure of the shell. The shell is the structure. I guess technically the shell just isn't on top of the turtle. It probably, shell kind of encompasses the turtle. So there we go. This shell encompasses our app. It's the structure of our app. Makes sense. Okay. Now, I did notice they didn't really talk about this code behind. Doesn't really seem to do much, so that's probably why they don't bring it up. So the shell structure. This is the main shell of the application. It defines the navigation structure and the main page. Navigation structure. I got some routing to, route to the main page. Local main page. Now this main page is what I'm most familiar with because this is the XAML that defines our user interface. This file contains a UI. We got a couple layouts, a couple labels, a button, and an image. The controls are arranged using a layout enclosed in a view. So we got a view, then we got a layout, then we got controls. A view, layout, controls. You're intended to replace the content with your own layout. You can also define more XAML pages if you have a multi-page app. The code behind for the functionality of your UI, straightforward. This is your event handler. You click the button. Maui program. Each native platform has a different starting point that creates and initializing the app. You can find this in the platforms folder in the project. So, not that we need to dig a ton, but this code is platform specific, but at the end it calls the create Maui app method of the static Maui program class. So here's a method, create Maui app. And if I were to dig in here, it calls create Maui app. That's what that says. At a minimum, you need to specify which class describes your application by using the generic method of the app builder object. Var builder, create builder, use app, which we defined earlier, that class, use the app class from up here. Here's the app class that returns the app shell, which loads the app shell, loads the main layout, the main page. Okay, piecing this together. The app builder also provides methods for tasks such as registering fonts and dependency injection, so that's always an important thing. Registering custom handlers and more. Platforms. Oh, there's that line of code. This folder contains platform-specific initialization code, files, and resources. There are folders for Android. At runtime, the app starts up in a platform-specific way. The Maui libraries abstract out the startup process, but the code files in these folders provide a mechanism for hooking up your own custom initialization. The important point is that when the initialization is complete, it calls the method, which creates an app described earlier. So they all have their own ways they boot up, but then they call this, which instantiates your app. The app loads the shell, and the shell specifies what page to load, which is main page, which produces that out. Makes sense. The CS proj is a project file with several noteworthy sections. So this is always up here, CS proj. Yeah, so this is the CS proj file. The initial property group specifies the platform framework that the project targets and items like the title. No, I saw a title somewhere else in the shell. Display name, My Maui app. I'm just going to throw EG, put a space EG, and see where that title shows up. So that's again, everyone wants to know where the title is. The app identifier, I'm sure that's used for deployment. The app version, to develop, package, and publish to the Microsoft Store. See this. Huh. I can only imagine deployment to all these different platforms. Like, this is a great tool, but I imagine deployment is tough. Getting it out on Android, probably easier than getting out on iOS. That's my understanding, is that it's always been easier, less hoops to jump through, lower bar to get an Android app out there. The item group, underneath the initial property group, let's, oh, this is good. Specify an image and color for the splash screen that appears while the app is loading. But you can also set the default location for fonts. So let's scroll down. Item group, app icon. Of course, app. So here, app icon, Maui icon. So resources, app icon, SVG, the SVG file, but splash screen. Defining some images. You can also set the locations for fonts, images, and assets the app uses. Well, there's a lot of important stuff in here. Images. Register any added fonts to the fonts folder with the app builder. Adding fonts kind of at the in the what was this? The Maui program.cs. Use the resources folder for specific resources. Okay, so these are kind of global resources versus specific. Knowledge check. In what method of the application should you create the initial window displayed by the app? In what method of the application object? I think it's the constructor. Or create window. Is that an option? No. In which method of the application object? The app object. So I'm looking for the app object. Okay, here. I think it's okay. Where do you implement logic for an event handler for control? In the XAML description of the page containing no, you implement the logic in the code behind. Yeah. Okay, using restroom, be right back. BRB using restroom. Give me just a minute. Right on. Create your first Maui app. Already did that. Okay, they're just calling this phone word. So I'm just going to use the app I've already done. Examine the solution. I've already examined all this. Resources, yes. Maui program. Configures the app and specifies the app class should be used. App constructor for the app class. New instance of the shell. The shell contains the structure or the layout. The main page contains the controls in the layout. Build and run on Windows. We just click Start Debugging. Give it a minute. While that's loading, okay, so we run it, and then we click the hot reload, and then we make it update by 5 each time, and click the button, and it should go by 5. So, first time you run it, it stopped for some reason, but nonetheless, click it again. Alright, hot reload, click the hot reload button, go back to Solution Explorer, go back to the code behind of the main page, update its update by 5, save, go back, updating by 5, yay. Run it on Android. Let's bring it down. Go to the Android device manager, new device, Pixel 7, base device. Kind of already have that. Return to Visual Studio. So we already got that. In the Visual Studio, debug, select Android emulators, Pixel 7. Alright, so now we're going to boot up in Pixel 7. Start debugging. This action builds, deploys, and runs the app. Now it doesn't, I don't know if it does it without debugging, right? So there's start debugging and start without debugging. Let's do a start debugging, follow the tutorial. Pretty sure it's going to do the same thing and start without debugging. That would make sense, but let's try it. Okay, so there's my Android emulator. And in my experience in the past, it's, again, just got to be patient with this. Maybe after I do my reboot, the hardware optimization process that's recommended will be used, and this will all run faster. You can see it's still spinning in the background, the output still going. So maybe after a reboot this will run faster. I'm glad you found my emulator. Found device. Well, let's look. I'm just looking. Warning: this stream what? Open Studio. YouTube Creator Studio. Just looking at these OBS things here while I'm waiting. It says category of gaming. I didn't select the right category. Come on, Android. Come on, buddy. Warning, the bit rate of 2500 is lower than the bit rate. This is what my stream status is good, but my bit rate is a little low. Let's save that error message. Look into that. Okay. Patience on this thing? I don't know if I need to be more patient or what. I don't know that streaming is slowing this down. I doubt it. Let's try again. Okay, now my output window's over there. Okay. Getting some different windows. Okay, now it goes back to this. Maybe it was sleeping. This is the last app I built. Now, this says it's not even started. And let's try again. There we go. Now it's probably loading. There we go. There we go. I don't know if it was patience or I think I just had to try a couple times. I don't love that. Didn't seem okay. App is running on the emulator. Again, I think after a reboot this will all run more efficiently. Add visual controls. Okay, so they summarize this. To recap, create and configure the application. Create and configure the application. App is resources. I said that 10 times. And create the initial window. The shell is the structure of the app, specifies the initial page for the application, and registration of pages for routing. This creates the window in the constructor as we answered. Okay, and then here's the UI layout. I mean, really, again, just kind of good notes to keep. The app class, you can add further pages, create more classes for business logic. The .NET Maui also contains application resources, images, icons, fonts, and default bootstrap code for each platform. The app class represents the application as a whole. It inherits a default set of behaviors from the application. Recall. Let me pull this back up. Okay. Recall from the previous unit that the app class is the bootstrap code that instantiates and loads for each platform. The app constructor will run and turn, usually create an instance of the shell and assign it to the main page. It's this code that controls the first screen the user sees based on the definitions in the shell. The app also has lifecycle events, methods for creating new windows. You have a single window by default, but you can create and launch more windows, which is helpful in desktop and tablets. The shell reduces the complexity of app development, providing the fundamental features most apps require: the hierarchy of the app, the navigation experience, navigation scheme, and a search handler. In a .NET Maui shell app, the visual hierarchy is described in a class that subclasses the shell. This class can consist of 3 hierarchical objects: flyout or tab bar. A flyout represents one or more items in the flyout and should be used when navigation pattern for an app requires a flyout. A tab represents the bottom bar and should be used when the navigation pattern for an app begins with bottom tabs and doesn't require a flyout. So this is in the shell, and I think by default the shell says a flyout. So if I go into the shell, somewhere I saw something about it. Loads the main page. Okay. These objects don't represent any user interface, but rather the organization of the visual hierarchy. Shell takes these objects and produces navigation for the content. I don't exactly see the tabs here, but it's what it says. Pages are the root of the hierarchy inside of a shell. So far you saw main page. Main page derives from content page. Main page inherits content page, which is the simplest page type. A content page simply displays content. .NET Maui has other page types: tabbed page for tab navigation, flyout page, master detail style presentation. A flyout page contains a list of items. When you select an item, okay, so a shell kind of defines the flyout or tabs, and then depending on that, if you have a tab page or a flyout page, these are the kinds of pages. And a content page displays a view. So then you have views. A view enables you to retrieve data in a manner. Content page, content view. The default view for a content page is content view, which displays items as is. If you shrink the view, items might disappear until you resize. A scroll view enables you to display items in a scrolling window. If you shrink the window, you can scroll up or down. Carousel is a scrollable view. Swipe through a collection of items. A collection view can retrieve data from a named data source and present each item using a template as a format. And then we have controls and layouts. Woo. So we got a shell. We got the application that loads the shell. The shell loads the page. The page has a view, and the view has controls and layouts. My Lord. The app has the shell has the page has the view, the views have the controls. Page, view, layouts. Page, view, layout. Okay, that's not so bad. Page, view, layout. Vertical and horizontal, you got all these other ones too, right? You've got absolute and flex layout, all these layouts for positioning of your content. A flex layout similar to a stack layout, but isn't, okay. So a stack is one on top of the other or one next to the other. On a tablet or phone, modifying this property in your application code allows you to adjust the display if the user switches from portrait to landscape. So stack layout has stack orientation. Obviously this has to change, right? So that's what they're saying. You change the orientation all the time. A stack layout is also available, which has a property named orientation. It would seem to me that this would be better than those. These are static, this seems dynamic. Flex layout, similar to stack. Oh man, I'm late for class. Hi JJMV. No class today. It's summer. Summertime. Where are you from? That's funny. Any of my past students might chuckle. Just going through some of these basic tutorials, learning .NET Maui. Probably taking longer than needed, but I'm trying to drill in some of the theory while we're writing some of the basic code. SoCal. Nice. Well, hello from the Midwest, where it's hot and humid. Isn't that always the easy thing to talk about? Weather. It was up to 90 yesterday. And 50% humidity. All right, back to the topic. So we got these different layouts in a Maui app. Stack layout seems nice, and they're saying that this flex layout is similar to stack layout, except it enables you to wrap the child controls if they don't fit in a single column, so the content wraps. So that even seems better because your content's going to wrap and kind of flow down into multiple rows or multiple columns. Sorry for that. We have the perfect weather at the moment. Yeah, that's what SoCal is. That's what SoCal is known for. That's what you hear. But if my hobby outside of what I do for work, obviously I code for work and I teach. But as a runner is my hobby. You don't always want perfect weather for running because you want to train in the heat. You want to train in the tough conditions to make you a better runner. Like you want to train in the mountains. You want to train in the humidity. You want to train in the heat. All these things make you a better runner. So you say sorry for that, and I would say nothing to apologize for. I actually prefer tough conditions over perfect weather, quote unquote. Grid layouts. Grids are tables, right? So nothing new there, like HTML, tables, checkerboards. All controls have properties. You can set initial values using the XAML. In many cases, you can modify the properties in the C# of your code. So here, these are my controls, and I'm modifying the text property of my counter button control, which it explains there. So here's my XAML. I wish this said XAML, not XML. Here's my XAML with a label and a button. And ooh, we got a grid row 0, vertical stacked layout, grid row 1, grid row 0. Paying a little bit closer to attention to that. This counter button. What do you do, JJMV? Are you a student? Why are you learning code? Are you in industry? Always interested to talk to people. Makes my day go by. So here's a scroll view and then a vertical stack layout. Again, going here. Vertical stack layout. But then they got the grid, they got talking about grid here. And down here they're talking about grid row. And then they're like, hey, if you want to manually code this in C#, this XAML could be coded in C#. And you could build your UI using C#. I just finished my computer science degree, but I do not feel ready for technical interviews. It's funny, I was talking about confidence, student confidence. And look, I work at a technical college. And it's something we see a lot when we educate students, and they're building that confidence. Building confidence is definitely tough. I guess, don't tell me where you went to school, but would you get a bachelor's degree? And did you build any sort of portfolios or projects? And do you have like examples of your work from school? So yeah, is it a bachelor's degree? Or what level degree? And then did you have school projects? Okay, C# code is more verbose. Verbose is a fun word that I had to look up the first time. I didn't know what it meant. That means, like if you can code something in 5 lines, why would you take 50 lines? If you took 50 lines to code something, that's more verbose. But it provides more flexibility that lets you adapt the UI dynamically. Now here in the shell, they're showing the test page, which is coded right here. So if I were to copy this, go here. Yes, a bachelor's degree. Tell me about your projects. Did you have any projects in your bachelor's degree? Like any capstone projects? You got anything live on the internet that you can show off? Not that you... And how'd you find my channel? How'd you find me? All the way in the Midwest. Sorry, man. You're the only one interacting with me. You built an API, some apps with Flutter, and a full stack web app with Next. Okay. That sounds like your curriculum wasn't just, it's more modern than a lot of computer science programs. I'm going to add this class, and it was called test page. Test page inherits content page. Okay, test page inherits content page, has a constructor with all your controls. So here's test page, all these controls, you got a view, a layout. This is cool, I like this stuff. I just searched for C# tutorials. Cool. Did you search for C#? Like, was this today, or did you find me before today? And thank you for chatting with me while we're going through this. My scroll view. Content uses the layout. Here's my label. The layout, children add. Okay, so we're adding the control to the layout. Here's a button. We're adding the button to the layout. We're wiring up the event handler. And setting the content to the scroll view. This dot content. That's cool. And then you found me yesterday. Cool, man. Yeah, YouTube's really good at whatever you're interacting with. You interacted with me yesterday, and I streamed today. It's gonna show you my stream. You ever code in C? I just searched for C# tutorials. So you said it looked like you did some JavaScript stuff. Did you code any C# in school? Here I need to change my shell to load my test page. So here's my shell. Test page. And then the route is also test page. Let's see if we get that to load. And it's just easier to run this on the Windows machine. So I'm literally at work, JJ. I'm literally at work, and not too often I have the time to self-train. And what I do is I teach myself some things, and then I bring it into the curriculum. Did you learn C# at your school? Kind of curious. Or are you just interested in learning C#? Let me power down my emulator. And try running this again on the Windows machine. Wonder if I yeah, when I change this up to load test page instead, if I control Z back to main page, whoop, Boot this up. It's not having problems with that. Partial class test page. Go down here. That's what it is. Content template. Let me just reform this. Just take this out, comment you out. JJ, do you have any, do you have demonstrations of your work that you can show potential employers? Yeah, it's not the point to show this test page. I'm not going to get caught up on it though. I'm going to bring back the other main page and continue on because that's not the point of this tutorial. But tuning a layout. Okay, so we got margin. I'm going to add some margin and padding. Which of these isn't? I don't see anything about dockable. What is the class used to create a screen in .NET Maui? Actually, I think it's a content view. Content view is the class you inherit from. Content page, you gotta go all the way back up. Pages are the root inside of a shell. How are you wording this? To create a screen. It might be a page. Yeah. There's one thing that we definitely strive for at Rankin is to build that portfolio out, and so by the time you graduate, you know, having a live portfolio with demonstrations of work. Now, it's always difficult getting things published on the internet, can be a challenge, and it's always changing. But kind of have a fun app that I'll show you real quick as an aside. So I just had a C# MVC class that kind of finished, and they had this semester-long final project where they built MVC web application that ties into a database, has user authentication, authorization, and I'm going to show that to you real quick because I got one student that I got it I've got his website kind of handy here. Got a couple of them, but this one's relatable because it was about, you know, like dog sitting and that kind of thing, and everyone has dogs, everyone loves dogs. There we go. Just had to find the URL. This is hosted on Azure, and if it gets used frequently, the the virtual machine kind of stays up booted and it doesn't have a slow load time. But since no one's really using it that often, like it shuts down when it's not in use. And so then when someone visits it the first time, if no one's been there in like 24 hours or whatever the cutoff is, it takes a minute to load to basically boot up a VM on Azure. It's kind of a fun one where it's like, okay, so we got a simple front end. It looks good. And they have these services where you can essentially, book a dog sitting or a dog walking or a dog cleaning. And, you can sign up for an account, right? So register as a new user, of course. But since I've already done that, and I know I'm an administrator here, so I can log in, all this other stuff, right? So, okay, so now I'm logged in, and I've got like an admin dashboard. And so this is all built with C# on the back end, tying into a Microsoft SQL Server database to keep track of your users, to keep track of your bookings. And so you got these different bookings here: dog washing and grooming, dog sitting, whatever it may be. And so these are the 4 bookings that $160, $130. You got a couple extra decimals there that need to be formatted off. But you can work with these bookings. So here, let's see, manage users. I'm not sure why the edit booking seems to be down at the moment. Search, so search, sort, all that kind of stuff. You've got your users, so that's the booking dashboard. This is the user dashboard, so these are your different users that are registered. And this is something that can go, this is a live example, portfolio of work, and this was one of the 4 semesters, so it's a 2-year associate degree. But this is just one example of many that I could show that is relatable because it's about dogs. And again, it's all live on the internet, tracking customers and bookings and user accounts and permissions of, if I'm a member, I can do certain things. If I'm an admin, I can do other things. So here I could see that my Evan Gudmestead at Gmail is an admin and a member. So I have access to the admin dashboard. So I have permissions to these areas of the site. So pretty fun, pretty cool, fun little project. Back to the task at hand though. Create the translator app. And I've already gone through this. But let's read about it. In this exercise, you construct the UI for a phone dialer app and implement the logic. You build the UI that takes advantage. Thanks, JJ. I agree. It does look nice. Did you learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript? Well, I know you learned JavaScript, and I know you did Next.js, so I'm assuming all those answers are yes. The app lets a user type into a text field and translate that text into number. It uses the letters that show up on the telephone keypad. CAB is all 2s because 2 has ABC. Yes, and TypeScript. Cool. Let me ask you this. How many people did you graduate with? And based on what you could tell, how many of those people are working in the industry? Like, if you just graduated today, like, assuming you just graduated this month. Okay, we're adding a phone translator CS class. Add the logic. Now notice this is a static class and a static method, and it's public, so I got to change a few things here. Public static class, which makes me wonder if my test page was public. Yeah, public partial class. Okay. This static class, this is really just a utility class, so we end up using this class. We end up using this class to call this method to do the translation. So this is not the okay, so this method doesn't exist. And I short-circuited one curly. So now let's bring in this method contains, and there's my translate. Okay, so there's a static method, a method called contains, it's an array of strings, and another method to actually do the translation. Okay, so there's my, we were 40 plus when we started, only 10 of us made it. I believe one of my classmates is working. Yeah. A couple things you said there. My understanding is that computer science has one of the highest dropout rates, if not the highest dropout rate in college in America. So it's just tough. People don't know what they're getting into. So congratulations on making it. That's an accomplishment. Good for you. And then it's also, as my graduates, know, it's a really tough market right now. What's your perception of the market, like of the job market? It's tough. Lots of jobs. There are lots of jobs, but yeah, tell me your perception. Create the UI. Okay, remove the scroll view and its contents, just leaving the content page control. So we're back to the main page. And just boot this up here, still show that this is working form before I hack it. That's tough. 40 plus down to 10. Must have been some tough curriculum. Or maybe really bad teachers. Or maybe both. Okay. We're working. So I said delete everything in the scroll view. So scroll view's gone. Okay, some verticals, some layout with margin and padding. So there's our layout side of that. So there's our content, there's our layout. Here's our label, enter a phone word. It's just a weird phone word. Okay, now we've got an entry. So we've got a label and we've got a text box. That's what we're looking at here. So this is our XAML. We've got a label and we've got a text box with a name of phone number text. So asking you of your perception of the industry that's probably not a good idea. I have a very doomed perception with AI in particular. It seems like we're near the end of software engineers. I regret it. Here's what I'll say about that. If you turn on the news, if you scroll through social media, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's talking about AI in our industry or it's talking about anything. The news is sensational. And so headlines like that and sensational content tend to make it to the top of our feeds. But the optimistic way of looking at it is, in my view, the data that I see is that there still are a lot of jobs out there. Not as many as there were a few years ago, but there still are a lot of jobs out there. And so my take on it is that there's still good opportunity. Like literally over the last 20 years, the number of jobs, the quality of jobs has been growing for a long time. And it's off of that peak, but there's still a lot of jobs. And the industry is definitely in a figuring it out, like how many engineers does it take to do a job? If you want to build an app, how many engineers does it take anymore? Maybe it used to take more engineers and now it takes less, and that might be true because of this tooling. However, there are jobs out there, and at Rankin, again, where I work, I still have computer science graduates getting jobs. It sounds like you're in that boat. Well, you saw 1 out of 10. Now that's not a good placement rate, but it's possible. So I know what you're saying. It looks tough out there. But I don't think it's my view, and I'm biased because I teach, is that there's still opportunities for entry-level developers out there. So I hear you, though. I hear you. Okay, a couple buttons that when they're clicked, they call a couple of methods. So these methods are on translate and on call. And we do not have these. These methods need to be in the code behind. Right? That doesn't exist. Now I'm also going to comment this out. Well, good luck to you, JJ. I agree with you. It's a good idea to work on that portfolio. And continue to learn, which is what we're here for. Respond to the button tap. Okay, it says remove the method and the count variable. So that's essentially what I was doing. It has 0 references, so we can delete. And here's on translate. You click the button, you're going to call this event handler. And so bring that in. So now we got that method. Okay, here comes the next step. Here's our if statement. Then my message to my students is it's possible, and it does require hard work. Like I tell you, man, I'm assuming you're a guy, so I can call you man, but that's an assumption. 'Cause I have no clue. Literally 20 years ago, it was like, oh, I studied music, and I didn't get a job in music. I have a bachelor's degree in music, but this one company talked about they wanted a software developer, and I talked to somebody and I got a job as a software engineer, and 20 years later I've been writing software. And so it was like literally you could stumble into this career 20 years ago. And there were and so it is harder today for sure. And I hear that story from like decades ago of like I didn't start off as a software engineer. I started off in another trajectory, but I wound up here. But today that's just not the case. It requires more hard work to get your foot in the door. And I don't know that that's a bad thing, because it's probably going to make the average software engineer that much better. You know what I mean? It just requires hard work, and that's probably a good thing in some ways. Now, it's not good for your first job. It makes it harder for you landing your first job for sure. Okay, so we if it's not an empty number, we're gonna show some button. We're gonna enable a button, and we're gonna put some text into a label. Otherwise, we disable the button. And we change the label to just say call. Okay, so here's the other button, because there were two buttons. So here, it's pretty cool that they this is on the main page class. Yeah, we're still on the main page class. So this was one button click handler. Now we're going to have another button click handler. This is an async method. The on-call method prompt by using page display alert. A little alert. Did I delete something there? Oh, I just missed a curly. Okay, save it at this point, test the application, and let's see these controls, and we should be able to click on translate something. All right, I got something looking right, and it does look like there's something already in there. If I click that, there's our alert, would you like to call? And that's as far as we've made it. We got this alert, but these buttons don't do anything. All good. So just some C#. Notice this on translate, just to show this off. This is the class that we wrote the helper method to number. So this is the class we kind of coded here with these methods. So this is just a static class with static methods. So we could say phone translator to number. And so we call the class method, class name.method name, pass that string in and get a number as the output. We then test the returned value of the translated number. All good. Here's that. Continue on. Dial the phone number. All right. I'll throw this on my emulator just because it's always cool to see it on a Windows machine, Android emulator. Except for it always takes forever. I gotta reboot my machine. The first thing I did would have been beneficial. These VMs to run faster. I'm mumbling here, but basically, if you've been with me since the beginning, the first thing I did in the tutorial was like I set up all my settings to run virtual machines utilizing the hardware that's on my machine. And that's like a really good first step to take. But I just wanted to like jump right in. last week when I first started learning this. And so I had a bunch of problems because I didn't optimize my hardware. And I still haven't done it quite right. But I'm getting there. I just got to reboot my machine for this last setting to take place. Let's move on. Here's my if statement with the try catch in it. Let's look at this while this is booting up. If phone dialer is supported, this is getting into some actual phone utility here. Open up the translated number. So actually make the phone call. There's an exception. If bad number. Otherwise, if it's not a null argument exception, catch any other exception and display an alert. So call the number, or display an error message. Now, looks like we had to get down into something even more specific. So let's put that try catch in here. When I click power, see, interesting. It must have been like sleep mode or something. And part of this is just getting used to the emulators in sleep, so I had to click power button to wake it up. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. But right now this doesn't make any sort of phone call, so let's put that try catch in there. Click on hot reload because that's cool. And the phone dialer class of Maui communication namespace provides an abstraction of the phone dialing functionality. Phone dialer class. For Windows, Android, iOS, and Mac, the static open method, right here, attempts to use the phone dialer to call the number provided as a parameter. The following steps show how to update the Android app manifest to enable Android to use the phone dialer. Windows, iOS, Mac apps follow the same general principle, except you specify a different capability in the manifest depending on the OS. In the Solution Explorer window, expand Platforms, Android, right-click the app manifest, open with automatic XML, select OK. Add the following snippet to the manifest node after the existing content for this node. Okay. To make a phone call, we got to do this in the Android manifest XML. Platforms, Android. Right-click the manifest. Solution Explorer. Let's shut her down. Platforms, Android, Android manifest. Right-click. Open with automatic editor selector. Right-click. Open with automatic editor selector, XML. It seems like add the following snippet after the existing content for this node. So we got manifest. Here's the existing content for that node. Save the file. You're saved. Control S. In the toolbar, select Android emulators, profile, start debugging. When the app appears in the emulator, it can take a few minutes. Enter a phone number or accept the default and select call. If the dial number alert, select yes. Verify the Android dialer appears in the app. Cool. Let this boot up. Translate call. Yes. Opens up in the app. That's cool. In this exercise, you added a custom UI to your application using pages and views. Again, you got shells. You got the app. The app has a shell. The shell has a page. The page has a view. The view has a layout. The layout has controls. Holy crap. You also added support for placing a call by using platform-specific APIs available for Android. Get my 100 XP. Learned the basic architecture of .NET Maui, created a Maui app, defined a shared UI, deployed an app from Visual Studio. Okay, you're stretching on the word deploy, but yeah, we took it from Visual Studio into an emulator. I'm cool with that. Use .NET Maui to access platform APIs. So that platform API, I suppose what they're talking about is phone dialer. You know, the code, you know, it's not the RESTful API that you were probably talking about, a RESTful API. This is just a code library that's built in to this Maui. You can see the namespace there, Microsoft. Maui application model communication phone dialer. The phone dialer API exactly enables an application to open a phone number in the dialer. Complete the module. I got the experience. I didn't sign in though. All right. So the last thing I wanted to do So that was supposedly 33 minutes, but I mean, if you really take your time, which I did, this stream has been going for a while. Yeah, you did a CRUD API. Yep. So you said Next.js. Did you do any deployment? Did you deploy, like in my I do MERN, right? So besides the C# stuff, we do Mongo database. Did you do Mongo database? Did you do Express, React, Node? And I'm assuming you learn React first and then you do Next.js. Was that your progression, or what was your progression in that JavaScript world? Okay, so got that one done. That's cool. The next thing I wanted to do was pull these Maui samples. Are you familiar with Git and GitHub? Did you put a lot of your work on Git? I'm asking a lot of questions to you, but just kind of curious what your curriculum was like. Okay, so let's clone something. I'm gonna close this. That's cool. And minimize that. There's me, JJ, my wife and my kid. I'm gonna clone these sample docs. I'm gonna clone this into this folder, Maui practice, git terminal, git bash here, git clone, paste. Take a look at some of the sample code. Yes, on MongoDB, but not the cloud version. Atlas. That's correct. That's your local. Man, Atlas is the way to go. Um, I did deploy a cafe website, but my credits ran out. Did you use Google Cloud? My class uses G Cloud. But that's the problem. You get free credits, and then this thing goes dead. That's the problem. Even that Azure site that you saw, that was you get $100 free credit from Microsoft, and then your credits run out. Okay, so here's Maui examples 9, 10. Let's just look at 9. Here's beginner series, beginner's task. Ooh. Railway, they give you a $5 credit? That's worthless. Render is a cool. You can check out Render. Free deployments. A lot of people like Render. To show you another kind of project that some students are working on is actually for me. I have a friend who owns a sports bar and grill, and you can see this is hosted on Render. And I've used G Cloud in my classes. I always recommend Google Cloud because they give $100 worth of credits. But Render is something I'm going to be looking into in the future because it plays really nice with GitHub, and so you got that CI/CD pipeline. You're probably familiar with that. Like if you put something out on Git, it redeploys. So Render has that whole process down pretty easily, and so yeah, it's a cool little website that a student or two of mine kind of built up for a friend of mine. And again, nice looking website, good, kind of wiring up this cart functionality here. And then my friend has point of sale system that we're going to wire this into, where when they check out, the receipt would actually get printed on a printer in the restaurant. So the cook can just pick the printer receipt up and then boom, 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 make the food. And so as soon as they click the checkout button, a receipt is printed in the kitchen. So kind of excited to help out a friend with this. That's the end result. I agree, man. Yeah, so check out Render to give you some free credits. I don't know, hobby for personal projects and small apps. It does say plus compute costs. Deploy full. Have you heard of this render.com before? Okay, so this is still working with main page. Main page has a grid. So this is that layout. Nope to render. Yeah, I haven't worked with it either, but it's just something on my future to do. Oh, they got view models in over here. Sometimes Just takes us a little bit to build. Clean, build solution. We went to Olive Garden a few weeks ago. Each table had a checkout tablet and you could pay right there. Yeah, I've seen that. Just payment for your bill. Yeah, that's cool. I really didn't have any goals here with this. The main thing was to complete that tutorial, which I've done. But also these repos that Microsoft makes available to us. I always like to keep my eyes on these and kind of see .NET eShop reference application. Okay, so what are in this .NET eShop reference application? Northern Mountains, point of sale. Point of sale API, point of sale. These are actually pretty doggone good. So I'm going to spend some time kind of combing through this. Order type, items, app data. This is all static data, which is cool, but I like Entity Framework and actual databases. But it is beginner. Messages, and a lot of this is just learning all the phone capabilities. That's going to be a huge learning curve. But take a step back. I like the back. The official samples: an eShop, point of sale, a weather app, podcast app. Now, .NET Home Repo links to hundreds of .NET projects. Okay, well that's just .NET, ASP.NET Core. Okay. I do know that as you go through these tutorials, again, if I kind of back out to Learn.NET Maui, here's the learning courses. We just did 1. 2, here's a custom layout, data binding, the model view model design pattern. Eventually you get to these. I'm wondering if these, I'm sure these apps are created in these tutorials if we continue. Here's a REST web service, local data, SQLite. See, maybe not. These tutorials are the beginners, though. Go back. Learn.net. So this is Learn.net. I know that they have a tutorial. I'm just trying to find it with .NET Maui and Blazor, and it's an e-commerce tutorial. And I was wondering if that was this .NET eShop for Northern Mountains. Yeah, I think it is, because it says update eShop to Aspire 9.2. Aspire. Goodness. See that? How cool is that? So you got a mobile app, you got a web app. And that's what makes this so awesome, is it's just all these different platforms. So here's the eShop repo, Docker desktop. Oh, that's cool. So we're going to actually use Docker here. This will be a good one. This would be like as I'm learning this summer, this would be the capstone kind of thing. doing this e-commerce store with all these different Docker and Blazor and Maui. This looks like a cool project. Azure OpenAI. Huh. That looks cool. So it's got to find the actual tutorial that builds this eShop. I'm going to do these beginner level tutorials and eventually make my way to this eShop. This is really cool. All right. Well, hey, thanks for hanging in there, JJ, and whoever else. I appreciate you learning along with me. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. I know I certainly did. I have some direction to go, continuing down these tutorials, continuing to learn Blazor. I'm going to keep going, and eventually I want to do something like this eShop, because this looks pretty slick. It's got 55 contributors. Updated last month. A reference application implementing an e-commerce site. Where's the actual tutorial? .NET Aspire. .NET Aspire. Yeah, man. Thank you. I'll go ahead and cut this off after I read about Aspire. An opinionated cloud-ready stack for building observable, production-ready, distributed applications. Lots to learn. All right, man. Have a good day. Take care. Bye.